I travel a lot as it's my hobby to explore other cities and usually prefer the late train to save on hotels. I still remember that night. It was a cold winter evening of 2022, and I had just broken up with my girlfriend. I felt lost and confused. I packed up and left the house to travel a bit and take my mind off from the emotional cloud. I clearly remember catching the 11:30 train that night. I was sleeping in my cabin when I felt the train slowing down. I rubbed my eyes awake, still half asleep, and looked out the window. I didn't recognize the place at all. It looked old, almost like an old station with rumbling walls, dim scary lights, and no station name. The station was surrounded by dense, dark trees, giving it an eerie, almost isolated feel, as if I had stepped into a horror movie scene. Then I noticed the people. Some of them sitting and standing on the platform, but something was off. None of them seemed to be boarding the train. The vibe was really odd. Like those people were from old times. The train stayed stopped for a long time, and I was the only one in my cabin. After what felt like ages without the conductor showing up or the train moving, I started to feel uneasy. Suddenly, I had this weird urge to get off the train. I even stood up, moved toward the door. Just as I got close, the doors shut, and the train picked up speed again. I sank back in a seat, watching out the window, and that strange station faded into the night. Arriving at the next station, two people came in and I asked them about that station, but no one knew what I was talking about. After arriving my destination, a conductor came. After a long while of asking, he told me there used to be a station in that area, but it burned down 12 years ago. Many people died in the fire, and the place was abandoned ever since. I still don't know if I imagined it, if I was half dreaming, or if I saw something that wasn't supposed to be real. Now, every time I take a late night train, I find myself tensing up to not experience that horror ever again. I've worked the night shift as a conductor for years. You get used to a lot. The usual commuters asleep, the occasional drunk talking to themselves. But a night of the last winter, I saw something that still messed with my head. It was a dead cold Tuesday night, with almost no one on board. I was doing my rounds, checking each car before the final stop. As I got to the last car, I saw this man sitting by himself in the very back, right next to the window. He looked out of place, wearing an old dark suit, and he was soaked through, though it hadn't rained in days. I asked for his ticket, but he didn't even acknowledge me, just sat there, looking out the window like he was lost. Then, after a long silence, he mutters, "I missed the last one. Didn't want to, but I missed it." Then he went right back to staring outside. I figured he was maybe drunk, so without bothering, I moved on. When I circled back a few minutes later, he was gone. Just gone. No other stops, no one else had boarded. But his seat, it was completely dry. Not a trace that anyone had even been there. I reported it to security at the next station, but when we checked the cameras, there was no sign of him ever boarding or leaving. Nothing. Just a blank space where he should have been. I don't know if he was real or something else. But since then, whenever I'm in that last car late at night, I just can't shake the feeling. My job in healthcare means I am no stranger to the last train home. It's usually just me and maybe 2 or 3 other people, mostly sleeping. But something happened last fall that I still can't explain. It was a Thursday night, and I was alone in my compartment, half dazed. We were approaching a long, creepy tunnel that I've always hated. It just feels like it drags on forever. Anyway, I was staring out the window when I saw her. A woman, standing at the edge of the tracks as we entered the tunnel. She was facing away from the train, dressed in a long yellow coat, just standing there. At first, I thought she was a worker or something, but as we got closer, she turned around. Her face was as white as a sheet, and I felt like she was staring through me. She raised her hand slowly, like she was trying to wave me down. I couldn't look away. I just sat there, frozen, watching as she faded into the darkness of the tunnel. When we came out the other side, I felt this wave of relief mixed with dread. I looked around, half hoping someone else had seen it, but I was still alone. When I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in my stomach. I replayed the scene in my head over and over. The woman standing there, just looking into the darkness. I tried to distract myself with the usual routine, making dinner, watching some mindless TV, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her figure again. That night, I tossed and turned in bed. I was unable to fall asleep. I kept thinking about how lonely and mysterious she looked, just standing there on the tracks. The whole thing felt like an unreal scene, but I knew it was real. I woke up the next morning exhausted, still haunted by the image of her. I debated whether to mention it to anyone at work, but it felt too strange. Instead, I just went about my day. Since that night, I can't bring myself to look out the window when we go through that tunnel. I keep my eyes on my phone for a long time to avoid seeing her again. That's all for today, guys. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.